to talk. This is one of your major problems, is that there is only one branch of government, and that's like only the legislative. So this means no executive leader to protect the states from foreign attacks, as well as no accountability over the government. No judicial branch, which means the lack of mediation of disputes between the states, zero regulation of interstate commerce, and no court system. State-wise, it means that states are unorganized individual unions. They are independent of each other, so that means it's prone to civil war, and there's no way to stop it, since it can't even create its own military. People do not have a voice in the government and are improperly represented in it. Because the government doesn't have a strong central government, it's prone to foreign invasions, it couldn't protect itself against civil wars, and it has no authoritative power over states to enforce the laws. And therefore, it couldn't regulate decisions, so that's unfairly representing the people, the states, and the government itself. So look, man, you have to go.
Okay, so there's another huge problem with you, okay? The federal government wasn't able to tax the states at all. Okay, this resulted in a lack of federal money, and it did not allow the government to grow in size. Also, because the government didn't have any money, they couldn't help the states grow and maintain important things such as schools or healthcare. The lack of federal funding, especially for healthcare, meant that most people couldn't afford the best medical care. In addition to not being able to tax the states, the federal government also didn't have a central monetary system. This meant that each state had its own unique money system that was worthless to any other state, which made it almost impossible to trade with other states. Since they could only trade within the state, the people didn't get a lot of money from trading. So in conclusion, the federal government didn't have enough money to help the states due to the inability to tax, and there was no centralized money system, which hampered the state's ability to trade with one another.
Another one of your major problems was that the federal government did not have the authority to raise an army. Without an executive head and hardly any control over the 13 states, the new nation couldn't have a way of solving internal conflicts and external affairs. This caused the national government to have to rely on state militias, which made it very unreliable and weak. One prime example of this would be Shays' Rebellion, when protesters from Massachusetts rose up and tried to attack the Capitol because of increased taxation on trade and individuals. Instead of the national government sending their own army to get rid of the rebellion, the national government had to ask the states to send their militias to go in this rebellion. Although the rebellion was unsuccessful, it brought about your major problems with having no militia. Along with the struggles of internal threats, you gave the nation very little defense against external threats and foreign affairs. For example, in the early 1780s, Britain was still impressing American sailors, and we could hardly do anything about it. Eventually, after a new constitution was constructed, the federal government was given more power and was able to raise their own army, but under your regulation, the national government could not enforce laws in all states, it could not protect the people, and all 13 states were their own individual nations with their own separate armies.
We come here to tell you that you have to go, because one of your major problems is that you have one branch of government, and that cannot happen because there's unequal and unfair representation of the state, the federal people, and the people.
Another big problem of yours is that the federal government can't tax the states, which means that the federal government doesn't have any money to help the states in things like education or healthcare. And the states all have their different form of money, so they can't trade with them themselves effectively.
And your last problem is you don't have any army. How do you expect to protect your own people if you don't even have an army? I mean, you can't, there's rebellions everywhere. You can't do anything about it, man. People are coming in and they just fight and you can't do anything, man. I'm sick of this.
You don't have it, cuz. You don't have it.
I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. I never looked at it like that. You're right. Maybe we should scratch this whole thing. Maybe we should just do a new constitution, or Maybe call it the United States Constitution. Well, scratch the whole Articles of Confederation, man. It's just not working. It's not working.